Hello and welcome back to Redirecting. Welcome back to Redirecting. This is going to be another message directed to the daughters of Zion. I'm going to get right to it, but before I do that, I want to say to you, please ignore or excuse the animal noises in the background. This is a farm, and so you're going to hear the goats and the sheep in the background and other animals as well. I don't want that to interfere with the message, however, so I just thought I'd let you know. For those of you who may be new to the channel, we are on a farm, so excuse the noise. But anyway, getting right to it, as you see from the title, that's what we're going to be talking about. Daughters of Zion, close your legs. Your life may depend on it, okay? And the reason I'm getting into that is because for some reason each generation believes that giving it up to some man who has whispered sweet nothings into their ear is going to keep him, is going to cause him to stay around or cause him to love you. And for some of you, it's not even about that. For some of you, it's just about that moment of pleasure that you may experience when opening your legs and allowing a man to enter into your space. Now, some of you may say, well, that's a little bit too much information for a video on this channel. And I say it is not. We've gotten to that point, daughters of Zion, to where soft cuddle type talking is not enough. There are young women who watch this channel. And I'm especially talking to those of you who are like very young, who have young men trying to talk to you, trying to convince you that he is worthy to enter into your space. He's worthy for you to open up your legs and allow him in. Now, there are conversations that a lot of mothers do not have with their children or their daughters. And this is why I am doing this particular segment for the daughters of Zion, because I've seen many of you who said that you wish someone had had this conversation with you a long time ago. And so I am having this conversation. I'm saying to you that you've got to be careful and you've got to understand what your worth is, okay? And even far beyond what your worth is, you have to understand what is required of you. That is not meant for us as women to bend and twist to the sexual desires of a man, especially when he or you are not in the will of the Father. Now, I first want to address this because this is a common thing that we hear from young people. And I kind of touched on it in another video. Young people will say to an older woman, to their grandmother or their mother, or even an older sibling, older sister or what have you, they will say things such as, how can you tell me how to be when you did the same thing when you were younger? Now, that is a form of manipulation. That is a form of manipulation to say, don't tell me what to do because you did the same thing. Now, again, like I stated before, if we're dealing with a situation where a person is still practicing a certain type of behavior, for instance, if you have your father telling you to leave crack cocaine alone or stop smoking, but he's smoking, okay, so then you're in a situation where you can kind of say, well, Dad, I noticed you smoke. Why are you telling me not to? Okay, you're in a situation then where you can kind of ask that question or make a statement, right? But in a situation where you're talking about your grandmother who 50 years ago did something, or your mother who did something 30 years ago, and they saw the outcome and they experienced the outcome of a bad decision, and they're telling you now as their mother, you being their child, don't do it. It's manipulation if you as a child try to say, or a teenager try to say, well, Mom, you did it, or Dad, you did it, or Grandma, Grandpa, you did it, or even to an older sibling who's trying to keep you from going down the same path. What we live in is what we live in right now, pardon me, family, is a society where those types of things are allowed, and to where modern psychology will make a young person feel like they have that argument to make, to keep you from putting them in check for things that you know are wrong. It's just like a young person saying, well, Dad, you sold drugs. And you're like, well, that was 30 years ago and I went to jail for it, right? And the young person is saying, well, let me make my own mistakes. And you're saying, well, no, you're not going to do this. I'm not going to let you make your own mistakes and end up in prison. I'm going to teach you the right way. A parent who has made mistakes in the past has a right to teach you the right way. If they experience difficulty in their life because they smoked or they did drugs or they sold drugs or anything like that, or they were a prostitute or something like that, they have a right to teach and instruct you not to do the same thing. And you as a child have no biblical right to manipulate them and say, well, because you did it, I can do it. That is not the case. So now that I've said that, you mothers who have daughters who may know of your past, don't allow them to use your past to try to justify their wrongdoing today. Because essentially what's happening is there is a non-breaking of generational curses when we allow ourselves to fall into the patterns of dysfunction decade after decade, generation after generation. If you know better now, teach your daughters better. Break the cycle. The cycle can be broken if you are creating the proper environment for your young people, for your daughters, for your sons. If you don't want your son to do drugs, don't allow drugs in your house. Don't allow them to be around people who sell or use drugs. If you don't want your daughter to be loose, don't allow her to hang around loose people, loose girls. Don't allow her to be in an environment where she's exposed to such behavior. Don't allow her to watch things on television. Don't allow her to be around young men who are going to push the whole idea of her opening up her legs before it's time. When you try to push or allow trust on a young person just because they're saying, what, Mom, you don't trust me? If you allow yourself to be manipulated like that, don't be surprised when you have a grandbaby 9 months later. Because you allowed a young person to manipulate your mind with what they call reverse psychology. There is a lot of mind manipulation going on in the world today. People are deceiving and being deceived. It goes so many different ways. But at some point, we have got to break the cycle. We've got to teach our young women to close their legs. Older women too, middle-aged women, it doesn't matter. Don't allow some man to say the right words to you to cause you to do the wrong thing. Because if you look at the whole situation and not just that moment, the time that it takes you to make that mistake or to open up your legs and experience whatever pleasure it is you're going to experience for that moment, think about the displeasure that comes afterward. Think about the heartache that you're going to experience if that man is not settled down in his mind and not sold out for the Most High. What if you open up your legs to a man who is not worthy, who's not willing to put a ring on your finger? And I'm only using the ring on your finger as a statement that most people are familiar with. I know that in Ivory culture, it wasn't putting a ring on the finger. Okay. Now that I've said that, don't allow yourself to be tempted to the point where you make such a bad, permanent mistake or decision. Because at the end of the day, the woman is going to be the one left holding the bag if she ends up with a man who doesn't care about his offspring. We know that that was one of the curses, that many households would be fatherless. And so why allow yourself to be put in such a permanent situation? Now, one of my viewers said something when I did a video recently where the woman had her face shot off by her boyfriend. And one of my viewers said something about, but aren't we supposed to forgive? Listen. There are certain things that we got to understand when it comes to statements such as forgive. Okay? We've got to get rid of that Christian mindset that makes us think that whatever someone does to you, even if they try to take your life, that you are supposed to just walk around with this love and overwhelming compassion and forgiveness for this person. This is not a conversation about forgiveness when somebody has tried to blow your brains out, when somebody has shot and killed your mother, if somebody has done something so heinous. This is not a conversation about forgiveness. This has absolutely nothing to do with forgiveness. This has something to do with wisdom and knowing how not to get in situations like that to begin with. And if you find yourself in a situation like that, learn how to flee from it and stay away from it. Because it's unfortunate when you have generation after generation of young women who believe that if they open up their legs and reveal and allow their prize to be given away to an unworthy person, that somehow what they have is going to be or cause staying power in a relationship. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Brenda's got a big old butt too, okay? That's an old song that some of you may not be familiar with, but it was an old rap song, I guess it was, or some type of early hip-hop music where they said, Brenda got a big old butt. I know I told you I'd be true, but Brenda's got a big old butt, so I'm leaving you. That's part of the lyrics to that song. In this song, the man is telling you, look, somebody else got a bigger butt than you, so I'm out of here. And so what happens if he got between your legs because you allowed him to? Now you're pregnant, now you've had a baby, but he's telling you Brenda's got a big old butt, so he's leaving you. What now? Was that moment of pleasure worth it? Now, some of you will argue and say, well, I got a baby out of it and I'm going to love my baby no matter what. That is not the point. We understand that if you find yourself in situations and you end up pregnant, the deed is done. We understand that you love your child. We get that. I'm mostly talking to young women who have not made that mistake yet, because it's unfortunate that a lot of young women say that and take that road. But then once that baby is no longer a baby, no longer sucking bottles and wearing diapers, but now the baby is 5 and 6 years old, sassy mouthed, getting in trouble, talking back. Now that googly mommy stuff that you had going on when the baby was first born is gone. Now you're dealing with situations that you would rather not deal with because you didn't look at the bigger picture when you open your legs to begin with. You cannot allow 30, 40, 50 minutes or an hour of pleasure, whatever it is. You cannot allow that time period to dictate the rest of your life. Because not every woman enters into a situation where there's going to be some proud father on the other end. It is what it is, family. And young women, you have got to start making better choices and decisions. Now, that's not for the men to say that women are out here just choosing bad men. That's not a fair thing to say. A lot of that still falls on the man because you shouldn't be a bad man to choose to begin with. But when you keep it real, as women, we also have to make good and better choices, not just for ourselves, but our children as well. When we see decade after decade of the same mistakes being made over and over, what we are doing is continuing the cycle of generational curses. Each and every one of us have the option or the choice to break the generational curses, but we are choosing to continue in these generational curses. Each and every time you open up your legs, young women, and each and every time you young men drop your seed in a woman that you know you're not going to marry, you are perpetuating the same madness that our grandmothers, our mothers, our great-grandparents, our ancestors, in some cases, you are perpetuating the same cycle of generational curses. You are actually helping to continue it on. And we have to have the desire to break it. If there's no desire to break it, We're just going to continue to see the same thing over and over, and we're going to continue to make the same complaints over and over. If we're not going to try to change things, why are we complaining about the outcome? The outcome is going to be the same if we continue to do the same things. And see, it's not just about having babies. It's not just about having babies. It's also about spreading disease. There are so many things that you have to consider when you open your legs prematurely to someone who has not committed to you in marriage. And I know some of you may say, well, you don't know how it is. You don't know what we go through. That is not an excuse for anything, family. When we look at the bigger picture, when we look at the children that are birthed in many unions and the man is out of their lives, one thing that I've been doing a lot of because of the Daughters of Zion series, I've been looking at paternity court, and it is really, really sad indeed, the dysfunction that we see all across the board with the men and the women. It's really a sad day when you have to have 4 or 5 men tested to see which one is the baby's daddy. That's really a sad day. And on the flip side of that, it's really a sad day when you've brought some man up in there and he's telling you he got 7 or 8 or 9 children by 4 or 5 different women and not committed to one of them. And we want to sit back and pretend like it's because of society and because of what other races of people are doing. This is no longer slavery days where you have a buck, where they used to call us bucks, and they would make him go and mate with the slave women. This is no longer that situation. We can no longer say that the white man is forcing you as a buck to go and drop your seed in anything that's walking. And this is no longer a situation to the Daughters of Zion to where the slave master has sent some man to come and drop his seed in you. You are spreading them willingly now. Spreading your legs willingly. Nobody is forcing you or him. Babies are being born into dysfunction. In some cases where they're being abused, unloved. And just like I keep mentioning the piece I did called Children by the Wayside. That is one video that everyone needs to pay attention to and listen to in the Black community. But it's unfortunate when we're talking about the condition of our children and how it worsens with each generation. Nobody wants to hear about it because they're like, look, we already know we got problems. Now, what's your solution? I get that all of the time. And if you listen to my channel, you would know that we talk about solutions all of the time. The problem is the solutions are not favorable to many people. A lot of people don't want to do what it takes to end the generational curses because sin feels oh so good. It all feels oh so good. And so we don't want to break the cycle. So if you don't want to break the cycle, you don't want to break the curses. It's as simple as that. What we've got to do is make up in our minds that we are going to be the change that we need. And that change begins with repenting. That's why I named this channel Redirecting. Redirecting is a form of repentance because you are turning from your old ways and redirecting into the right direction. You're leaving the bad and cleaving to the good. We've got lots of changes to make. And change is one step at a time. In some cases, you could take 2 or 3 steps at a time. However many steps you take in the right direction is better than going backwards or sitting and standing still. We have got to be the change that we need. We have got to redirect. We've got to teach our sons and our daughters the right way. We've got to stop allowing lawless men and women to instruct our children in the ways that they should not go. Everyone has a platform on YouTube spitting and spewing out what they think people should be doing. Unrighteous things. You got men telling our sons at an early age to call their mothers the B word until she thinks that's her name. You got men on here teaching young men that as soon as you wake up to the knowledge of self, that you need to get yourself 2 or 3 wives. Everything thinking with the wrong head. And women are falling for it because they are silly women laden with sin. Understand, when you enter into that bed, I'm going to call it the bed of affliction because that's what you enter into. When you enter into that bed with a lawless individual, a lawless man, you have to understand that when you make your bed, you've got to lie in it. And then you have to say to yourself, okay, this don't feel right now. I know that I shouldn't be doing this. Fast forward 6 months ahead. Stop thinking for the here and now. Say, oh man, this is about to be good. Look at him. He is handsome. He is buff. Forget about that. Forget about that. Forget about what you are about to experience or what you want to experience. And say to yourself, where am I going to be 6 months down the line if I make this wrong decision with this man? Those are the questions we need to be asking ourselves, daughters of Zion. And this is where you have to put on strength and say, you know what, I'm going to be stronger and better than this. And first of all, don't even allow yourself to be put in a situation to where a man could even start coaxing you in that direction in the first place. Don't even allow him to get to the point. If it's on Facebook and he's messaging you, sending you pictures of his body, don't be tempted by no picture, because if he sent you that picture, he's probably sent it to somebody else too. And if he's trying to invite you to ride him, just imagine how many other he has written. Understand where I am coming from, daughters of Zion, because the stories of woe that we hear after the fact is why I'm talking about this today. When you see and hear the tears of the daughters of Zion because they have allowed themselves to make wrong choices and wrong decisions, that's when it gets real. No, it's not real when you're in the bed. It gets real after you have allowed it to settle in. And you say, well, look, this went nowhere. I did it all for nothing. I did it all for nothing. You gave yourself away for nothing. So instead of allowing yourself to be so easy, daughters of Zion, it's good to play hard to get. Don't allow these men to continue to manipulate. Don't continue to ignore instructions from those who are trying to keep you from going down the same path that they went down. Listen to the voice of reason. Listen to the voice of reason and make better choices. Keep your legs closed. Open up a book. Get some sense. Get on your knees. Pray. Do whatever it is you have to do to get through that stormy time. Seek the Most High Yah for truth and understanding, and a man that will take care of you, a man that will love you. But don't make that your goal and your mission. The scripture says, if you delight yourself in the Most High, he will give you the desires of your heart. Delight yourself in Yah, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Don't allow yourself to be sold cheaply by some brute beast that creeps into houses and lead captive silly women laden with sin. I want you to know, daughters of Zion, to my sisters, young and old, that I love you dearly. And I know many of you don't understand this type of talk. Some of you have expressed that you don't need to be so harsh, Sister Deborah. Some of you have expressed that, but like I've said before, the time for coddling is over. Too much is happening that we cannot continue to ignore. Don't be one of those where the scripture talks about in the last days that people won't be able to stand sound doctrine, but their itching ears is going to seek after something that they don't need. All I have for you is the truth. The truth will always be, the scripture says, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. I'm trying to set you free, daughters of Zion. So we're going to keep it real, and we're going to continue to redirect, because if we do not redirect, we are going to continue the cycle of dysfunction, generation after generation, thus continuing the generational curses. With that, I will say I love you and shalom.